Most people look at an aircraft carrier and see one giant ship. Analysts see something very different. They see aircraft, escorts, submarines, sensors, command networks, logistics, fuel, maintenance crews, helicopters, radars, intelligence flows, and political signaling all moving together across the ocean. That is why the phrase aircraft carrier can be misleading. The carrier matters, but the real unit of power is often the carrier strike group. In this briefing, we are going to separate the headline from the system behind it. We are going to look at how a carrier strike group is defended, why missile swarm debates are usually oversimplified, and why modern naval power is best understood as systems versus systems. Welcome to Warfront Intel. This series explains modern military systems in plain English, how they work, why they matter, and where the popular debate usually gets it wrong. The framework we will use throughout this presentation is simple. Modern warfare is not just a contest between individual weapons. It is a contest between systems. Those systems include sensors, platforms, weapons, command networks, electronic warfare, logistics, geography, and human decisions under pressure. If you want the reference guide that goes with this series, download the free Modern Warfare Systems cheat sheet. It gives you the plain English vocabulary behind the concepts we will keep coming back to in this briefing and in future Warfront Intel episodes. A carrier is not defended by one weapon. It is not protected by a single missile, a single radar, a single fighter squadron, or one heroic ship standing between danger and the fleet. A modern carrier strike group survives because it is defended by layers. It is defended by aircraft operating far from the ship, destroyers and cruisers scanning the sky, electronic warfare systems trying to confuse the threat, interceptors racing to meet incoming weapons, decoys attempting to create doubt, and crews making decisions under extreme time pressure. So when people ask, could a U.S. carrier survive a 100-missile swarm? They are usually asking the wrong question. The better question is this: how many layers does the attacker have to break through before the carrier itself is actually in danger? In Part 1, we will walk through the defensive logic of a carrier strike group in a large missile swarm scenario. This is not a prediction of a specific battle. It is a high-level, public source framework for understanding how layered defense works. The goal is not to claim that carriers are invincible. No ship is invincible. The goal is to understand why the issue is more complex than a simple missile versus ship comparison. To make the structure clear, we will walk through 6 defensive layers: uncertainty, distance, the air wing, the escort screen, radar and air defense, electronic warfare and deception, and the last-ditch problem. The first defensive layer is not shooting down missiles. The first defensive layer is making it hard for the enemy to know exactly where the carrier is, where it will be, and when it can be attacked. The ocean is enormous. A carrier strike group is mobile. It can change course, coordinate with other forces, reduce or manage emissions, and use deception. In modern warfare, finding the target is often as difficult as striking the target. This matters because long-range weapons still need a kill chain. A simplified kill chain has several steps: detect the target, identify it, track it, communicate its location, assign a weapon, launch the weapon, update the weapon if necessary, and then achieve a hit. If the attacker loses track of the carrier, launches based on old information, or cannot update targeting data, the missile problem changes. The defender has not intercepted anything yet, but the attack has already become weaker. So Layer 1 is uncertainty. The phrase missile swarm can sound decisive because the number is dramatic, but the number is only part of the story. The attacker is trying to create too many problems at the same time. Too many radar tracks, too many decisions, too many incoming angles, too little time, and too much uncertainty. The objective is not always to make every missile hit. The objective can be to force the defender to spend interceptors, reveal radar behavior, split attention, or create one opening where a smaller number of weapons can get through. That is why modern naval defense is not a simple math problem. It is a chain of detection, classification, decision-making, and interception. In other words, it is not missile versus carrier. It is kill chain versus defense chain. The second defensive layer is distance. A carrier strike group does not want the first serious defensive decision to happen next to the carrier. It wants the fight pushed outward. That is where the carrier air wing matters. The U.S. Navy describes aircraft carriers as central naval platforms with crews and air wings equipped for a broad range of missions, including sea control, strike operations, and operations across the electromagnetic spectrum and cyberspace. In a high-level educational sense, the carrier air wing can help intercept aircraft, threaten launch platforms, provide airborne sensing, and complicate the attacker's timing. The goal is to disrupt the attack before the incoming weapons become the only problem. This is why a missile swarm scenario is not just a missile versus ship contest. It is also a contest over who controls the battle space before the missiles are launched. The next layer is the escort screen. Guided missile destroyers and cruisers exist because a carrier needs protection, sensing, and additional firepower around it. The Navy describes DDG-51 guided missile destroyers as multi-mission surface combatants capable of anti-air warfare, anti-submarine warfare, and anti-surface warfare. The same official fact file says these ships can operate independently or as part of carrier strike groups. This is critical. The ships around the carrier are not just escorts in the old ceremonial sense. They are sensor platforms, command nodes, missile shooters, and defensive layers. The destroyer may detect one set of threats. Another ship may contribute a different angle. Aircraft may add additional information. The group's defensive picture becomes stronger when multiple sensors, platforms, and commanders are working together. The escorts are both shield and network. Now we reach the layer most people think of first: ship-based air defense. Modern U.S. destroyers use advanced combat systems and radars to detect, track, and engage air and missile threats. The Navy's DDG-51 fact file describes Aegis-related systems as including multifunction radar, air warfare systems, anti-submarine warfare systems, the Mk-41 vertical launching system, and other weapons. It also states that newer Flight 3 ships with the AN Spy-6 air and missile defense radar are designed to support simultaneous anti-air warfare and ballistic missile defense, strengthening integrated air and missile defense. But here is the important point. Radar is not magic. A radar track is only useful if the system can classify the threat, prioritize it, assign a weapon, and engage at the right time. Against a large swarm, the problem becomes one of timing and inventory. Which targets are real? Which are most dangerous? Which require immediate engagement? Which can be handled later? How many interceptors should be allocated? What happens if the enemy uses decoys or jamming? This is where the phrase layered defense becomes real. No single layer is expected to solve everything. Each layer reduces the problem for the next one. The next layer is the invisible one: electronic warfare and deception. Missiles do not just need speed. They need guidance. They need sensors, seekers, data links, or targeting information. If the defender can confuse, jam, spoof, seduce, or delay that guidance, then a missile that looks terrifying on paper may become less effective in practice. This does not mean electronic warfare can solve everything. It means electronic warfare is another layer in the stack. A missile may be detected by radar, engaged by interceptors, confused by electronic warfare, pulled away by decoys, or forced to make decisions based on imperfect information. Every additional layer creates another chance for the attack to fail. And this cuts both ways. The attacker may also use electronic warfare. That is why modern warfare is not just metal against metal. It is information against information. If a missile gets through the outer layers, the strike group still has closer defensive options. But this is the layer no commander wants to rely on. Close-in defense is important, but it is also a sign that previous layers did not stop the threat. At close range, time is compressed. Decisions are faster. The consequences of a mistake are higher. That is why the best defense is not a dramatic last-second interception. The best defense is forcing the attacker to fail earlier, to lose track, launch from too far away, reveal itself, be intercepted by aircraft, be engaged by escorts, or waste weapons on false targets. In a large missile swarm scenario, survival is not about one perfect shield. It is about stacking enough imperfect shields that the attack breaks down before it reaches the center. So could a U.S. carrier strike group survive a large missile swarm? The honest answer is, it depends on the scenario. It depends on distance, geography, launch platforms, missile types, coordination, intelligence, electronic warfare, weather, readiness, defensive inventory, allied support, and whether the carrier group is operating as part of a wider joint force. Carriers are not invincible. No ship is. But the simplistic claim that one missile swarm automatically makes carriers obsolete misses the real issue. The attacker has to complete a kill chain against a defended, mobile, networked system. The defender has multiple opportunities to break that chain before the carrier itself is at risk. That is the central idea. The fight is not missile versus carrier. It is kill chain versus defense chain. If this layered framework is helping, I put the core system terms into a free Modern Warfare Systems cheat sheet. It gives you a plain English reference for sensors, platforms, weapons, command networks, electronic warfare, logistics, and geography. You can download it using the link below. It is free, and it is designed to make every Warfront Intel briefing easier to follow. Now let's step back from the missile swarm question and answer the foundation question behind the entire discussion. What is a carrier strike group in the first place? The aircraft carrier is the centerpiece, but it is not the whole system. The U.S. Navy describes aircraft carriers as the centerpiece of America's naval forces and as highly adaptable and survivable airfields. It also states that carrier crews and air wings are equipped for a wide range of missions, including sea control, strike operations, and operations across the electromagnetic spectrum and cyberspace. That description is important because it tells us what a carrier is supposed to do. It brings aircraft, command capacity, mobility, and presence to places where fixed air bases may be unavailable, politically complicated, or too far away. But the carrier does not do this alone. It operates with aircraft, escorts, sensors, logistics, commanders, and support networks. So the first principle is straightforward. The carrier is the centerpiece, not the entire system. A carrier strike group is a moving formation built around the carrier, but it includes much more than the carrier itself. An official public example is Carrier Strike Group 1, which includes a flagship carrier, a carrier air wing, a guided missile cruiser, and guided missile destroyers. Exact compositions can vary depending on mission, availability, geography, and command decisions, but the principle remains the same. The strike group combines aviation, surface combatants, command and control networks, sensors, defensive systems, and sustainment. That combination is what makes it strategically important. If you only look at the carrier, you see a ship. If you look at the whole strike group, you see a mobile military system. The air wing is one of the main reasons the carrier matters. A carrier is not just a large ship with a runway. It is a moving airbase. Its aircraft can provide presence, sensing, strike capability, air defense, reconnaissance, and support to the wider force. This matters because the air wing gives the strike group reach. It allows the group to interact with threats and opportunities far beyond the hull of the carrier itself. In a defensive scenario, aircraft can help push the fight outward. In a crisis response scenario, Aircraft can provide options without relying entirely on land-based runways. That is why carrier power should not be reduced to the steel hull. The carrier's power comes from what it enables: aircraft, command decisions, mobility, and sustained presence. The escorts are another essential part of the carrier strike group. Destroyers and cruisers bring sensing, defense, command support, and weapons capacity. As noted earlier, the Navy describes DDG-51 guided missile destroyers as multi-mission surface combatants capable of anti-air, anti-submarine, and anti-surface warfare, and able to operate independently or as part of carrier strike groups. That means the escorts are not decoration. They are part of the combat system. They help detect threats, defend the formation, contribute to the shared picture, and complicate the attacker's problem. In a serious crisis, the carrier is not supposed to be treated as one isolated target. It is the center of a moving network. The ocean is not just a flat map. It is a three-dimensional battle space. A carrier strike group has to think above the surface, on the surface, below the surface, and across the electromagnetic spectrum at the same time. Aircraft may operate above the group. Surface ships may screen the carrier. Submarines may affect the underwater picture. Helicopters, sonars, radars, satellites, and communications links all add more complexity. That is why the system is complex. Every domain adds another layer of risk and another layer of defense. Now we get to the part almost nobody talks about in dramatic carrier debates: logistics. A carrier strike group is powerful because it can operate forward, but sustained operations require fuel, food, spare parts, maintenance, ammunition, medical support, and communications. The carrier itself is often described as a floating city because thousands of people live and work aboard, but that city still depends on supply chains. Logistics determines endurance. It affects tempo. It shapes where a strike group can remain, how long it can operate, and how quickly it can recover after intense activity. This is one of the biggest differences between casual commentary and serious analysis. Casual commentary asks, which weapon wins? Serious analysis asks, can the system sustain the mission over time? A carrier strike group is not only a combat formation, it is also a floating industrial operation. The next layer is command and control. Hardware does not win by itself. Sensors do not matter unless information is interpreted. Weapons do not matter unless they are assigned to the right targets at the right time. Aircraft do not matter unless they are launched, tasked, recovered, maintained, and integrated into the larger plan. A carrier strike group is constantly turning information into decisions. Where is the threat? Is it real? Is it a decoy? What is the priority? Should aircraft be launched? Should the group reposition? Should escorts spread out or tighten up? Should the commander preserve interceptors or spend them early? Should the group signal presence or reduce its signature? These are not simple yes or no questions. They are trade-offs. This is why the most important part of a carrier strike group may not be the thing that looks most dramatic on screen. It may be the command system that allows the group to coordinate aircraft, ships, sensors, and weapons under pressure. Carrier strike groups are also political instruments. The Navy's public fact file says aircraft carriers are central to operating forward and notes that, in times of crisis, leaders often ask where the carriers are. That statement captures something important. Carriers are not only used for combat. They are used to signal presence, reassure allies, deter adversaries, respond to disasters, and create options. A carrier strike group can arrive without asking another country for runway access. It can remain offshore. It can move. It can support aircraft. It can provide visible presence without immediately becoming a land commitment. That political flexibility is one reason carriers remain valuable even in an era of long-range missiles and drones. Again, this does not mean carriers are invincible. It means their value is broader than the question, can a missile hit a ship? The better question is, what options does a carrier strike group create before, during, and after a crisis? The biggest misunderstanding is treating the carrier as if it operates alone. One-ship thinking asks whether one missile can defeat one vessel. Moving system thinking asks how aircraft, escorts, sensors, command networks, logistics, geography, and political signaling interact. One-ship thinking looks for a single decisive weapon. Moving system thinking looks for chains, kill chains, defense chains, logistics chains, and command chains. One-ship thinking produces dramatic headlines. Moving system thinking produces better analysis. That is the Warfront Intel framework. We are not trying to make any platform sound invincible. We are trying to understand what the platform does inside a larger system. If you remember one idea from this section, remember this. Most people see one ship. Analysts see a moving system. The carrier is the centerpiece, but the strike group is the real formation. The air wing gives it reach. The escorts give it defense and sensing. The logistics network gives it endurance. Command and control turn hardware into coordinated decisions. Geography shapes what is possible. Political context shapes why the carrier is sent in the first place. That is why carrier strike groups remain central to serious naval analysis, not because they are invincible, and not because every criticism is wrong, but because they represent a complex mobile system that cannot be understood through one-weapon comparisons. This is the central takeaway from the entire presentation. Modern warfare is best understood as systems versus systems. A carrier strike group survives by turning one incoming problem into many smaller problems. It tries to avoid being found. It pushes the fight outward. It uses aircraft, escorts, sensors, interceptors, electronic warfare, deception, logistics, and command decisions to reduce risk one layer at a time. At the same time, the carrier strike group itself is not one ship. It is a moving system made of aviation, surface escorts, command networks, logistics, people, sensors, geography, and political purpose. So the next time you see a dramatic headline about carriers, missiles, drones, or naval warfare, start with the Warfront Intel question. What system is interacting with what system? If this framework helped, download the free Modern Warfare Systems cheat sheet using the link below. It breaks down the concepts we used today: sensors, platforms, weapons, command networks, electronic warfare, logistics, and geography. It is designed to make future Warfront Intel briefings easier to follow, especially when the headlines are dramatic and the underlying systems are complicated. You can also join the Warfront Weekly Briefing for plain English defense analysis every week. In the next briefing, we will take this same systems approach below the surface and look at why finding a modern submarine is so difficult. If this type of educational breakdown is useful, subscribe to Warfront Intel, download the free cheat sheet, and join the weekly briefing. This is Warfront Intel. I will see you in the next briefing.